Alright people, how you doing? I hope you're having a damn good day. Welcome back to the channel. The first ever tactics video for EAFC 24, and it had to be Manchester United's 4-2-3-1 under Erik ten Hag. So with this system, we've got Anthony Martial starting up front, Bruno Fernandes just in behind him, Marcus Rashford starting on the left wing, we've got Pelistri on the right wing, we've got Casemiro and Eriksen in the double pivot role, we've got Martinez and Lindelof in the centre-back departments, we've got Dalot and Reguilon in the full-back departments, and then between the sticks, we've got Andre Onana. In the substitutes department though, we have got Hoyland, Garnacho, Medjbri, Amrabat. I don't know how to pronounce his name just yet, but our backup goalkeeper, Aaron Wan-Bissaka and Rafael Varane. We've got Evans, Maguire, Shaqiri, Sancho, Anthony, Van der Beek, McTominay, Shaw, and a few other players that I do not care to mention, although I do love them all. But there's a lot of players there. So we've gone with this team because this is the team that I think will play against Burnley on the weekend, which is why I've gone with a more realistic approach. And with the formation, I have created a 4-2-3-1 wide, one goalkeeper, two centre-backs, two full-backs, one centre defensive midfielder, one central midfielder, one cam, two wingers, and one striker. So for the tactics going forward, the defensive style is to press on possession loss. So when you do lose the ball, you will to implement an immediate press, trying to win it back as quick and high up the field as possible. Manchester United, in real life, they have a very high win percentage in terms of winning the ball nice and high up the field and transitioning into attack. Unfortunately, though, they haven't been able to put the ball in the back of the net more times than not, or even be effective with it. So you will look to try and squeeze the back line if you do lose it, or squeeze the goalkeeper at times, trying to send runners forward, trying to clog the passing lanes, cut those balls out, make sure you are winning it nice and high up the field as well. And then as for the team width, it is set to 35. It's a nice, narrow, compact system. You don't want the opposition to be able to have a comfortable time in the middle of the park playing the ball. Tiki-taka systems, you don't want that at all. You want them to be able to funnel it out wide into those wide areas. You want your fullbacks to be able to deal with them. And if they don't and they whip the ball into the box, you do want the likes of Onana or your two centre-backs, or even your centre-backs and the likes of Casemiro to be able to win the aerial duels. And that's why we've gone with a 35 width. As for the depth, it's a nice high line set to 80. You want to try and squeeze the opposition in their own half, force them into errors, force them into mistakes, have them try and play that long ball that you know that your fullbacks or your centre-backs can recover, or even the likes of Andre Onana, who will be a sweeper keeper in this formation going forward. So you want them to be able to make the mistakes, and you can do that by playing a nice high line. Of course, you can be exposed on the counter, on the break, if the opposition has fast players like the likes of Salah or Mbappe or whoever you are playing. So be a bit more cautious with it. But I will say there is a system that I will be introducing right now after this one, where you can more or less combat that. And then as for the offensive builder player to set to balance, you have seen the likes of Martinez hitting those long balls into the forward line, the likes of Rashford or Hoyland or Martial up front. You do see that, which is why I've gone with a more balanced approach, because they do like to transition quickly into attack, but at the same time they do like to possess the ball, have it circulating around the field, have players take a touch, more or less try and work their way in. But you want to have a bit more of a dynamic approach, which is why I've gone with the balanced builder play. As for chance creation and set to forward runs, you want your forwards playing on the shoulder of the opposition's backline, trying to exploit that space by making those runs in behind, trying to stretch the backline on a vertical scale where you can open up a lot more space for the midfield to work with, likes of Bruno Fernandes or Eriksen. You want to give them as much time on the ball as possible, and you can do that. Sorry, I've clicked the wrong button there, but you can do that with having a width of 70. It's a nice widespread midfield, spreading it on a more of a horizontal plane, so that way you will have your fullbacks joining up with the attack in those wider areas as well. But more importantly, like I said before, you do want to try and generate space for your midfield, the likes of Bruno Fernandes, the likes of Eriksen, sometimes even the likes of Casemiro. You want them to have space and time on the ball to be able to ping those long 40-yard passes into your forward line. And then you've got players in the box set to 6, 3 players in, 3 players out. You want your forward line making those attacking runs into the box, but you want your midfield and sometimes your fullbacks to try and be on the edge of the box in case the ball is ricocheted or knocked out into that wider area or onto the edge of the box, so that they can try and circulate the play and try and whip it back in for a more of an attacking approach. And then we've got corners and free kicks. As per always, like I did with FIFA 23, I've set it to 4. So in terms of the instructions, Andre Onana, he is set to come for crosses and be a sweeper keeper. Goes without saying, he's a box office sweeper keeper. Got Inter Milan to the Champions League final by playing box office football, and that was between the sticks. So he's a very good keeper at being able to find those long balls, being able to hit the likes of Rashford in transition, or Pelistri or Anthony or Martial or Hoyland. He has that ability, that great pass on him, that long ball, very, very accurate as well. So he can almost be a quarterback in some situations. Come for crosses, it goes without saying, you want your goalkeeper to be able to claim those aerial balls, whether it's a cross, a corner, a free kick. You want them to be aggressive, claim that ball, alleviate the pressure and the stress on the back line at times. Moving forward though, we've got Martinez and Lindelof there set to the base set of instructions. What I can say is though, for Martinez, he can have aggressive interception set on and step up. That's a more realistic approach in terms of creating his personality in the game. But you will leave massive holes in your defense and it's not really worth it, which is why I've gone for the base set of instructions. As for Reguilon, he is set to join the attack and overlap, creating the width down the left-hand side, making a load of space for Marcus Rashford, who will be operating as a more of an inside forward on the left-hand side. And then as for Diego Dallo, he's set to join the attack as well, but this time have a bit more of a mixed approach for his run type. He will look to sometimes make those overlapping runs, creating space down the right-hand side, but more times than not making the inverted runs, creating more crossing opportunities by having an underlapping run of the winger. But at the same time, you do want him to invert a bit more so he can join up with the midfield, add another supporting body in there to try and win the ball back nice and high up the field, or even try and support the team in possession. As for Casemiro, he's set to cut passing lanes, stay back while attacking. What I did notice, they've removed the ability for the centre defensive midfielder to drop between the defence, which I don't like, because Casemiro does play in the back line more times than not. So it is a bit frustrating, but hopefully they can update the game to implement that again. And then normal interceptions are set to be on for him, and then cover the wing and be the deep line playmaker. You do want him to get on the ball and be able to spray that big, long diagonal ball into the left wing. He has done that more times than not throughout the course of his Manchester United career. Not so much the right-hand side, but to the left-hand side, definitely. And then cut passing lanes, you want him to try and shield the back line from any balls that are being played down the centre of the park. As for Eriksen, he's set to get forward, stay on the edge of the box. Normal interceptions are set to be on, stick to position, and then cover the wing. So basically, you do want him to advance forward, join up with Bruno Fernandes in creating a dual 8 system, with Casemiro being the lone defensive midfielder. But at the same time, you also want him to get nice and high up the field when you are trying to win the ball back, so it creates another body in that area to try and win the ball back, stopping passing lanes, breaking down certain attacking moves from the opposition, and then stay on the edge of the box. You don't want him to make overlapping runs of your striker. You want him to more or less be where Bruno Fernandes is, like I say, creating a dual 8 system. And then speaking of Bruno Fernandes, he's set to come back on defense, stay on the edge of the box, drift wide, and then aggressive interceptions. He will look to try and lead the press alongside Højlund. In this case, it's Martial, which is why I'm saying Bruno Fernandes will look to lead the press, because he more times than not does. Come back on defense. He does like to drop deep, link up play with Casemiro and Eriksen, especially if you are into the kosh a little bit. He will drop deep, look to circulate play, draw the opposition out as well, drawing out either a centre back or the opposition's DM slightly deeper, creating space for the likes of Martial or Marcus Rashford to operate in. Staying on the edge of the box makes sense, especially with the likes of Eriksen playing alongside him in certain moments. You want to try and circulate the ball on the edge of the area, creating space for the attacking players to work with, as well as trying to whip those balls into the wider areas, the wider regions, for your fullbacks to try and whip the cross into the box. And then drift wide, very much a Kevin De Bruyne type mold, where he will look to try and drift wide right. More times than not, he will look to try and drift all over the place, but wide right is the area that you want him to work with the most. He will look to operate in that area, whipping those crosses into the box for the attacking forwards. Then we've got Pellistri. He has a differing role compared to Antony, and a very differing role compared to the likes of Marcus Rashford on the left-hand side. But he is set to come back on defence, have a balanced width, so he will look to sometimes come inside a bit more, operate with the likes of Bruno and Casemiro, almost as an inside right attacking midfielder, and then come short, like I say, ball to feet, have the ball, dribble, carry it over yards of space, and just be able to operate with it a bit more. He is a very effective player with the ball at his feet, by the way. And then with all your forwards, you do want them to be in the box, waiting for the crosses to be whipped into them. And then as for the likes of Marcus Rashford, he's said to have a basic defensive support, so he won't always look to come back on defense. Sometimes he will, but more times than not, he's going to look to try and preserve his legs for when you do transition with the ball into the attack. As for the chance creation, it is set to a balance width, so he will sometimes look to hug the touchline, but because you have the likes of Reguilon operating as the guy who operates down the left flank a lot, he will look to try and cut inside a bit more, joining up with Martial very high up the field, trying to almost create a dual striker system. As for support runs, it is set to get in behind. You want to try and exploit the defensive backline by having the likes of pacey Marcus Rashford playing on the edge of the end and trying to exploit that space in behind. And then we've got him set to get into the box for the crosses. And then as for Martial, he's set to drift wide, plays a false 9, normal interceptions are set to be on, and then stay forward. He's going to be the outlet ball at times, linking up play with Marcus Rashford and even Bruno Fernandes, hype the field, and then have a drift wide mentality where he will look to sometimes drift wide left, whereas Marcus Rashford will try and take up the striker position. And then false nine, it goes without saying, he's going to ask for the ball into feet, try and link up play nicely, try and drop off a bit more, draw out the opposition centre backs, creating space for either Pelistri, Bruno Fernandes, or Rashford to join up and attack in that area. So of course, Manchester United have been hit with injuries, but when the likes of Luke Shaw and Anthony come back, as well as Højlund when he is in the team, the instructions do change ever so slightly. So we'll start off with Luke Shaw. He's set to join the attack and have a mixed approach, very much like Dalla on the right hand side. On the left hand side, you'll look to try and replicate and recreate the same thing, because the likes of Shaw, he does look to join up with the midfield in certain moments. Sometimes you do catch him in the midfield as a DM sitting next to the likes of Casemiro. And you also want him to make those attacking overlapping runs, creating space for the likes of Marcus Rashford. Whether it's inverted or overlapping, you want him to be able to join the attack and whip in those nice crosses that he can produce. As for Anthony, he's set to come back on defense, stay wide, getting behind, and then of course get into the box. It's a very much a winger mold that I have gone with for Anthony, and I have said this throughout the course of my FIFA 23 tactics as well. He is going to look to try and beat his man 1v1 on the touchline in that wide right position, trying to go either left or right, looking to cross the ball in or try and whip in a goal scoring opportunity of his own by taking a shot. So yes, he will look to try and beat his man. He will look to try and play on the edge of the opposition's backline, trying to exploit that space from behind. So he is going to do that, being the attacking threat in the wide right position, and he is going to try and help back on the opposition by trying to help his fullback. And then as for Rasmus Højlund, he is set to a very different role compared to Martial. The team looks very different when Højlund plays compared to Martial. But he is set to have a balanced width, so he will look to sometimes run the wider channels to collect those loose balls, trying to press as well. But more times than not, he is going to try and occupy that central role, be the target man as well, ball into feet, holding off the opposition's backline, trying to link up play with Rashford, trying to draw the opposition's backline onto him, opening up a load more space for your wingers or your attacking midfielders to try and operate into that extra space that is created. As for the interceptions, it is set to aggressive. You do want him to be able to lead that press with the likes of Bruno Fernandes, almost creating a 4-4-2 formation at times, with Bruno and Højlund pressing the backline and pressing the days and the lights out of them as well. You do want him to also stay forward, very much like Martial, be the link-up play, be the out there ball at times. But because he's going to be a very strong, dominating presence for the opposition, he will be able to hold the ball up quite nicely and then link it up very well with your other players. So with the other formation I've gone with, it's also a 4-2-3-1 wide where I've brought in the wingers. But what I will say is use this formation when you're playing a very ball dominant team or a very engaging massive team like a PSG or a Liverpool or even a Manchester City at times. So as you can see here for the formation, it's a 4-2-3-1 wide, 1 goalkeeper, 2 centre-backs, 2 full-backs, 2 defensive midfielders. That's the massive change for the system. 1 cam, 2 wingers, and then 1 striker. As for the tactics going forward, the defensive style is set to pressure on heavy touch. So they will look to try and keep their shape, maintain their structure as well, the integrity of the team and the formation going forward, and they'll wait for the opposition to make a mistake with a pressure on a heavy touch. They will look to then try and exploit that and then transition quickly into attack. So that's why I've gone with that. As for the team width, it is set to 40. It's more slightly spread out compared to the 35 that we saw in the previous set of instructions, but because you have the double pivot in front of the back line, you don't need to worry too much about closing down angles because you have another body in front of the back line. As for the depth, it's a mid-block this time, set to 60. You do want to try and not be exploited with the pace in behind the likes of Mo Salah or Mbappe or the likes of Erling Haaland. You want to try and rein those players in, and that's why I've gone with a mid-block. As for the offense, the build-up play is set to balanced. It's, again, creating a nice dynamic approach. You can have those long balls into the forward line. You can have that quick, fast-paced build-up, or you can look to try and slow things down, passing the ball around the midfield and trying to build up play from the back. As for the chance creation, though, it is set to forward runs. You can also have it into direct passing, but I've gone with forward runs again. You do want the likes of Højlund or Martial and Rashford and Anthony or Pelistri to make those runs, trying to stretch that opposition back down, still creating a threat for the opposition at times, keeping them on their toes. And then as for the width, it is set to 60 again, a much more narrow system. You don't want to have your fullbacks too wide this time. You want to try and keep them as compact so that if you do lose the ball, you can quickly get into your defensive shape. But keep in mind there will be less space in the midfield to operate with because you have more or less compacted everybody a bit more. As for players in the box, again, still set to 6. You want 3 players in, 3 players out. And then as for corners and free kicks, it is still set to 4. So with this system, Onana stays the same. Martinez and Lindelof also still stay the same. The likes of Dalot will look to have a bit more of a balanced attack, so he won't always look to bomb on forward, and he will look to invert a bit more, creating a back 3 system when the likes of Reguilon, does bomb on. So as you can see, Regulon, he's set to join the attack and overlap, so he will still be creating that width down the left-hand side, whereas the likes of Dello, he'll be a bit more conserved with his attacking approach. As for Eriksson, this is the major change to the formation. He's set to cut past and stay back while attacking. Like I say, you want your double pivot in front of the back four at all times to try and create a nice layer of protection. And then normal interceptions are set to be on for him, cover the wing, and then be the deep line playmaker, spraying those long balls into the forward line, getting those balls in behind for your forwards to run onto. That's what you want Eriksson to do. As well as Casemiro, you also have the same set of instructions for him. Cut past and stay back while attacking, normal interceptions, deep line playmaker, and then cover the wings. So he will look to also spray those long balls into the likes of Marcus Rashford or Martial or Højlund, whoever you have in your forward line. And then as for Bruno Fernandes, again, the same set of instructions for him. Pelistri, this time slightly differing role. He's set to come back on defense, have a bit more of a balance width, and then get in behind. He wants to play on the shoulder of the back line, exploiting the space in behind, and that nice, good space to run into, and then get into the box. As for Rashford, he is set to have a slightly differing role as well. Again, basic defensive support is set to, well, basic, and then cut inside and get in behind. So this will more or less try and create a 4-4-2 formation more times than not, especially when you don't have the ball and you're out of possession. 2 banks of 4, 2 strikers up front. Rashford will be that secondary striker, and then get into the box for the crosses. And then as for Martial or Højlund, they will have the same set of instructions as well. Balanced width, getting behind, aggressive interceptions, and then stay forward. Like I say, you want your forward line to try and stretch the opposition's back line on a vertical scale, creating as much space as they can for the midfield to operate in for those nice long balls that will eventually be smashed into them. So yes, my dudes, I hope you have enjoyed this. This is my version of EAFC 24, the 4-2-3-1 Manchester United Erik ten Hag tactics. That is a mouthful. So we will be creating more tactics for different various teams. If you can, hit that like button down below. Subscribe if you are new. We've got a load more of content coming your way.